Opening, immediate hook. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. The day I discovered my son had stolen everything from me, I was looking for my reading glasses. Isn't that ironic? At 70 years old, the little things: misplaced keys, forgotten appointments, reading glasses left on the dining room table, these were my biggest worries, or so I thought. I opened my front door as quietly as possible, not wanting to startle anyone. That's when I heard Benjamin's voice drifting from the living room. My son was on the phone, and something in his tone made me freeze in the hallway. It wasn't the words at first. It was the laugh, cold, triumphant, a sound I'd never heard from him before. "It's done, baby," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. I transferred all of it, $280,000, every last penny she had. My hand flew to my mouth to stifle the gasp threatening to escape. The walls seemed to tilt around me. "Can you imagine her face when she checks that account?" Benjamin continued, his voice dripping with something I couldn't quite name, something that made my stomach turn. "God, she's so trusting. Always has been. Made it almost too easy." The woman on the other end, Victoria, my daughter-in-law, laughed. Even through the phone, I could hear her pleasure. "Your mother never suspected a thing. Not for a second. She thinks I'm helping her manage her finances. Poor thing's too old to understand how banks work these days." Too old. The words hit me like a physical blow. I pressed myself against the hallway wall, my 70-year-old heart hammering so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. This couldn't be happening. Not Benjamin. Not my son. Not the little boy I'd rocked to sleep, the teenager I'd helped through heartbreak, the man I'd supported through every milestone of his life. But it was happening. And I'd almost missed it, because I'd come back for a pair of reading glasses. 5 years earlier, establishing the foundation. To understand how I got here, standing in my own hallway, eavesdropping on my son plotting my financial ruin, you need to know what my life was like before. Before the betrayal. Before I learned that the people you love most can become strangers wearing familiar faces. My husband Arthur and I built our life together from nothing. We were both 25 when we opened Martinez Pharmacy in downtown Boston, a tiny storefront wedged between a dry cleaner and a corner deli. Arthur had just finished his pharmacology degree. I had a business certificate from community college and a dream of creating something that mattered. Those early years were hard. Beautiful, but hard. We worked 16-hour days, 7 days a week. I can still remember the smell of that place, antiseptic and hope mixed together. We knew every customer by name. Mrs. Chen with her arthritis medication, old Mr. Rodriguez who needed help reading his prescription labels, the young mothers who came in at midnight when their babies' spiked fevers panic in their eyes. We weren't just filling prescriptions. We were part of people's lives, their trusted friends in times of sickness and health. Literally, Benjamin was born 3 years after we opened the pharmacy. I can still see Arthur's face when the nurse placed that tiny bundle in his arms. My strong, capable husband, who never flinched at anything, stood there crying like a baby himself. "We made this," he whispered, looking at our son with wonder. "Ella, we made a person." We raised Benjamin in the small apartment above the pharmacy. He did his homework at the counter while we worked. He learned to count by organizing pill bottles. His first job was sweeping the floor for $5 a week. We built a good life. Not fancy, but good. Honest. Full of love. Arthur died 5 years ago this November. Heart attack. Sudden. 1 minute he was restocking the aspirin display, humming along to the radio. The next he was on the floor, and I was screaming for someone to call 911. He was gone before the ambulance arrived. The funeral was a blur. Hundreds of people came, customers we'd served for decades, other business owners from the neighborhood, Benjamin's friends from childhood. They all told me how much Arthur had meant to them, how he'd extended credit when times were tough, how he'd delivered medication in snowstorms to elderly patients who couldn't leave their homes. I sat in the front pew of St. Catherine's Church holding Benjamin's hand and wondered how I would survive without the man who'd been my partner for 45 years. "I'm here, Mom," Benjamin whispered, squeezing my fingers. "I'll take care of you, I promise." And I believed him. God help me, I believed every word. The pharmacy sale, 3 years ago. The suggestion to sell the pharmacy came from Benjamin about 6 months after Arthur's death. I was still working 70-hour weeks trying to keep the business running by myself. trying to fill the enormous hole Arthur had left behind. "Mom, you look exhausted," Benjamin said one Sunday when he came over for dinner. He'd started visiting more often after his father died, and I was grateful for the company. The house felt too empty without Arthur's presence filling it. "You can't keep working like this. You're 70 years old." There was that phrase again. 70 years old. As if reaching that number meant I'd suddenly become fragile, incapable. "I'm fine," I insisted even though I wasn't. The truth was running the pharmacy alone was killing me slowly. Every day was a reminder of what I'd lost. "You've worked enough," Benjamin pressed. "Dad would want you to rest, to enjoy your retirement. You've earned it." He made it sound so reasonable, so caring, and maybe part of it was. Or maybe I just wanted to believe my son had my best interests at heart. We sold Martinez Pharmacy 3 years ago for $450,000. It broke my heart to sign those papers to watch strangers walk through the door of the place Arthur and I had built together. But Benjamin held my hand through the whole process. He helped me negotiate with the buyers. He handled all the paperwork. He was there. After the sale, plus our savings and Arthur's life insurance, I had just over $600,000. It seemed like an enormous amount of money to me. Enough to live comfortably for the rest of my life. Enough to help Benjamin if he ever needed it. Enough to leave something for my future grandchildren. I was careful with it. I invested $300,000 in conservative funds, kept $280,000 in my main savings account for living expenses, and put the rest in smaller accounts for emergencies. I'd lived through enough lean years to know the value of financial security. Benjamin knew all the details because I trusted him. He was my son, my only child. Why wouldn't I share everything with him, Ted? Victoria enters, 2 years ago. Benjamin met Victoria Hayes at a business conference in Chicago. He called me the next day and I could hear something different in his voice. Excitement, hope. Something I hadn't heard since his divorce 10 years earlier. "Mom, I met someone," he said. "Someone special." Victoria was 38, 12 years younger than Benjamin, with the kind of polished beauty that comes from expensive salons and personal trainers. When he brought her to Sunday dinner for the first time, she walked into my modest home wearing a dress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. But she smiled warmly. She complimented my pot roast. She asked thoughtful questions about the pharmacy, about Arthur, about my life. She called me Mom by the end of the evening. "I've always wanted a close relationship with my mother-in-law," Victoria said, helping me clear the dishes despite my protests. "My own mother passed when I was young. I never had that special bond." She looked at me with tears in her eyes, and something in my chest softened. Here was this beautiful, accomplished woman, vulnerable and yearning for maternal connection. How could I not embrace her? "You have it now, dear," I said, pulling her into a hug. "Welcome to the family." The wedding was 6 months later. Small but elegant. Victoria insisted on keeping it intimate, just close friends and family. I paid for most of it, about $35,000, because Benjamin mentioned they were saving for a house and money was tight. "You don't have to do this, Mom," Benjamin said when I offered, but his relief was obvious. "Nonsense," I replied. "You're my only son. Let me do this for you." Victoria hugged me at the reception, champagne on her breath and gratitude in her eyes. "Thank you, Mom. You've made this day perfect. I promise I'll take good care of Benjamin. And of you." Looking back now, standing in my hallway, listening to her laugh about my naivety, I can see how carefully she played me. Every word, every gesture, every tear, all of it calculated. But at the time, I was just a lonely widow, grateful to have a daughter-in-law who seemed to want me in her life. The slow manipulation, 18 months ago to 6 months ago. The changes started subtly. So subtly, I almost didn't notice. Before, Victoria Benjamin visited 3 times a week. We'd have coffee talk about his consulting work, reminisce about Arthur. Those visits became my anchor, the thing I looked forward to most. After the wedding, the visits became less frequent. Once a week, then every 2 weeks. And Victoria always came with him. Don't misunderstand, I didn't mind Victoria's presence at first. I wanted to build a relationship with her. But slowly she began dominating our conversations. "Benjamin, tell your mother about the new client," she'd prompt. "Mom, you should really consider updating your wardrobe. Victoria knows a wonderful personal shopper. Have you thought about what you're going to do with all your money, Mom? You should really have a plan." That last question should have raised red flags. But Victoria asked it so sweetly with such apparent concern that I just thought she was trying to help. I have investments, I told her, and savings. I'm quite comfortable. But have you thought about estate planning, making sure everything goes where you want it to? Benjamin and I were just talking about how important it is to have everything organized. You know, in case... She trailed off delicately, but the implication was clear. In case something happened to me. I was 70 years old. Something happening to me wasn't exactly far-fetched. I have a will, I said. Everything goes to Benjamin. That's wonderful, Victoria said, smiling. But what about more complex assets? Your investment accounts? Do you have anyone helping you manage them? Over the next few months, Victoria asked a lot of questions. What bank did I use? How much was in my various accounts? Did I have any debt? Any other properties or assets? I answered honestly because these seemed like reasonable questions for family to ask. Maybe Victoria was just trying to understand our financial situation. Maybe she was thinking about the future, about inheritance, about making sure I was taken care of. Or maybe, and this is what kills me now, she was assessing my worth, cataloging exactly what there was to steal. The power of attorney, 6 months ago. The suggestion came from Benjamin during one of their now rare visits. April, I think it was. Definitely spring because I remember the cherry blossoms were blooming outside my window. Mom, we need to talk about something important. Benjamin said, his expression serious. My heart jumped. Was someone sick? Was there bad news? What's wrong? I asked, already imagining the worst. Nothing's wrong, he assured me quickly. But Victoria and I have been thinking. You're getting older. There it was again. Getting older. As if I hadn't noticed. And what if something happened? What if you had a medical emergency or couldn't handle your finances for some reason? We'd have no way to help you. Victoria nodded sympathetically. My aunt went through this, Mom. She had a stroke, and because she hadn't set up any legal protections, her kids couldn't access her accounts to pay her bills. It was a nightmare. What are you suggesting? I asked. Power of attorney, Benjamin said. Just for your main account. That way, if you ever need help, if you're in the hospital, or just want someone to handle things for you, I can step in immediately. No bureaucratic delays. No complications. He made it sound so sensible, so caring, like the responsible thing to do. And you won't use it unless I need help? I asked. Of course not, Mom. It's just a precaution, for emergencies. Victoria reached over and patted my hand. It's what responsible families do, protect each other. 2 weeks later, I went to First National Bank with Benjamin. Marcus Chen, the branch manager who'd handled my accounts for 20 years, walked us through the paperwork. Mrs. Martinez, you understand that by signing this, you're giving your son full access to your primary savings account, Marcus asked, looking at me over his reading glasses. He'll be able to make transfers, withdrawals, anything you could do. I understand, I said. Benjamin's my son. I trust him completely. Marcus hesitated just for a moment. Looking back, I wonder if he saw something I didn't, some red flag in Benjamin's eagerness or Victoria's hovering presence. But he didn't say anything. He just slid the papers across his desk. I signed my name, Ella Martinez, in my careful, slightly shaky handwriting. The same signature I'd used for 45 years on pharmacy prescriptions and business documents. The signature of a woman who'd built a life through hard work and trust. I had no idea I was signing away my future. The final months, 6 months ago to present day. After I gave Benjamin power of attorney, the visits became even less frequent, maybe once a month. And when they did come, the conversations felt different, distant, like Benjamin was going through the motions. How are you feeling, Mom? He'd ask, but his eyes were always on his phone. I'm fine, dear. How's work? Busy. Really busy. Victoria and I are working on this huge project. And he'd launch into details about clients and contracts, none of which I understood. I'd nod and smile, just happy to hear his voice, even if he wasn't really talking to me anymore. I started noticing other small changes. Benjamin asked about my health constantly, not in a caring way, but in an assessing way. Are you taking your blood pressure medication regularly? When was your last doctor's appointment? You seem tired, Mom. Are you sleeping okay? At the time, I thought he was being attentive, worried about his aging mother. Now I realize he was checking how long I might live, how much time they had to execute their plan. Victoria's questions became more pointed too. Mom, have you thought about writing a detailed will you know, specifying exactly what you want to happen with your money? Do you have any other accounts we don't know about, just so we have a complete picture? Have you considered moving to a retirement community somewhere with less maintenance? You could sell this big house. That last suggestion made me bristle. This house held 45 years of memories with Arthur. Every room echoed with his laughter, his presence. I'd die before I sold it. I'm quite happy here, I said firmly. Thank you for the concern, but I'm not ready for that yet. Victoria smiled, but something flickered in her eyes. Frustration calculation. I couldn't quite read it. The truth is, they'd already started stealing from me. I just didn't know it yet. The discovery, present day Saturday afternoon. Which brings us back to that Saturday afternoon. Back to me standing in my hallway, my reading glasses forgotten, listening to my son destroy me over the phone. The best part, Benjamin was saying, his voice full of dark amusement, is that she'll never suspect me. She'll think it's a bank error, identity theft, anything but her own son stealing from her. God, she's so naive, Victoria replied. Does she really not check her accounts online? She barely knows how to use Email Vic. She's from a different generation. Technology scares her. They both laughed. Actually laughed. Something inside me cracked at that sound. Not my heart that had already shattered into pieces. This was something deeper, something fundamental. The entire image I'd held of my son, built over 50 years of love and care, just disintegrated. The Benjamin. I knew the little boy who brought me dandelions from the yard. The teenager who called me from college just to hear my voice. The man who held my hand at his father's funeral that Benjamin didn't exist. Maybe he never had. I wanted to burst into that room, to scream at him, to demand explanations, to shake him until the real Benjamin came back. But something stopped me, some instinct for self-preservation that cut through my shock and pain. If I confronted him now with no proof beyond what I'd heard, Benjamin could manipulate the situation. He could convince me I'd misunderstood. He could use my age against me, suggest I was confused, my memory unreliable. He could make me doubt my own sanity. And Victoria, clearly the mastermind behind this, would help him do it. No, I needed to be smart, strategic. I needed proof and a plan before I showed my hand. I backed away from the living room as silently as I'd approached. Each step felt like walking through water, my legs heavy with shock. I eased the front door open, then closed it behind me with a soft click that sounded deafening in my ears. Outside, the world continued like nothing had changed. Mrs. Patterson was watering her garden next door. A teenager skateboarded past, music blasting from his headphones. The mailman waved cheerfully from across the street. But my world had ended. Completely. Irrevocably. I gripped the porch railing, my knees threatening to give out. The October sun felt too bright, too normal. How could the sun still shine when my own son had just stolen my entire future? Somehow I made it to my car. My hands shook so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition. When I finally did, I just sat there staring at nothing, my mind refusing to process what I'd heard. $280,000. Gone. Everything I'd saved. Everything Arthur and I had built together. Everything I needed to live on for the rest of my life. Just gone. And Benjamin had taken it. Not a stranger. Not some faceless hacker. My son. My only child. The person I loved more than anyone left in this world. The tears came then. Hot and angry and heartbroken all at once. I cried for the betrayal, for the years of love I'd given him, for Arthur, not being here to help me navigate this nightmare. I cried for my own stupidity in trusting so blindly, in ignoring what should have been obvious warning signs. But most of all, I cried for the death of the relationship I'd cherished most in my life. My son was gone. Not dead, which might have been easier to bear. Just gone. Replaced by this stranger who could steal from his own mother and laugh about it. The phone call, 30 minutes later. I don't know how long I sat in that car parked on my own street like some kind of fugitive. Long enough for my tears to dry into salt tracks on my cheeks. Long enough for shock to slowly morph into something else. Rage. Pure crystalline rage. I'd survived losing Arthur. I'd survived selling the pharmacy that was our life's work. I'd survived 70 years of challenges and heartbreaks and obstacles. I was not going to let Benjamin and that woman destroy me. My phone was in my purse. I pulled it out with trembling hands and scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I needed. Rebecca Thompson, my best friend for 43 years. If there was anyone who would know what to do, it was her. She answered on the second ring. Ella, I was just thinking about you. Want to grab lunch tomorrow? Rebecca. My voice came out strangled. I need you. The change in her tone was immediate. What happened? Where are you? I'm in my car. On my street. I can't. The words stuck in my throat. Stay there. Tell me where exactly. I'm coming right now. I gave her my location 3 houses down from my own like some kind of coward hiding from her own life. I'll be there in 15 minutes, Rebecca said. Don't move. Don't do anything. Just wait for me. True to her word, Rebecca's silver Camry pulled up behind mine exactly 14 minutes later. I watched her get out, tall, straight-backed, her gray hair cut in that no-nonsense bob she'd worn for decades. Rebecca had been a family law attorney before she retired, and she still carried herself with that professional competence I'd always admired. She slid into my passenger seat and immediately pulled me into a hug. I collapsed against her shoulder and the tears started again. Shh, she murmured, rubbing my back like I was a child. It's okay. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out. Just breathe, honey. Breathe. When I could finally speak, the story came tumbling out in broken fragments. The overheard phone call, the $280,000, Benjamin's laugh, Victoria's contempt, all of it. Rebecca listened without interrupting, her face growing harder with each detail. When I finished, she sat back in her seat, her jaw clenched tight. That son of a bitch, she said quietly. Rebecca rarely cursed, so the words hit with extra impact. That calculating, manipulative son of a bitch. What do I do? I asked, feeling helpless. Lost. How do I even begin to handle this? Rebecca was quiet for a long moment, her lawyer brain clearly working through possibilities. When she spoke again, her voice was calm, measured, strategic. First, we need to verify what you heard. Tomorrow morning, first thing you go to the bank. Talk to Marcus Chen. Get a printout of all your recent transactions. See if the money is really gone. I nodded, already dreading that conversation. Second, Rebecca continued, you cannot, I repeat, cannot let Benjamin know that you know. Not yet. If he realizes you're onto him, he'll move fast. Transfer the money somewhere you can't track it. Probably offshore. Victoria seems like the type who'd have that planned already. The thought made me feel sick. So I just pretend everything's normal. Exactly. Can you do that? Can you look your son in the face and act like you suspect nothing? Could I? The idea of sitting across from Benjamin making small talk while knowing what he'd done, it seemed impossible. But then I thought of Arthur, thought of 45 years of hard work, thought of every pill bottle we'd filled, every customer we'd helped, every sacrifice we'd made. That money represented our life together, our legacy. Benjamin was not going to take that from me without a fight. Yes, I said, and my voice was stronger than I expected. I can do it, Rebecca smiled grimly. That's my girl. Now, third step, and this is important, Ella, we need to document everything. Every conversation you have with Benjamin from now on, you record it. Got it. Record it, but isn't that illegal? In Massachusetts, it's legal to record a conversation you're part of even if the other person doesn't know. Trust me on this. You'll need evidence if this goes to court. Court. The word made everything feel terrifyingly real. You think it will go to court? I mean, Rebecca looked at me seriously. Ella, what Benjamin did, what he's doing, is elder financial abuse. It's a felony. If we can prove he used that power of attorney for his own benefit instead of yours, he could go to prison. Prison. My son. In prison. The thought should have horrified me, and it did. But underneath the horror was something else. Something that felt uncomfortably like satisfaction. Benjamin had made his choice. Now he'd face the consequences. The plan. Still Saturday, late afternoon. Rebecca and I spent the next 2 hours in my car, parked on my own street like conspirators. She helped me think through every step of what came next. When you get home, she said, act normal. If Benjamin's still there, tell him you went to see me. We had coffee, lost track of time, nothing unusual. What if he asks about the bank account? He won't. Not yet. He thinks you never check it, remember. He's probably planning to come by in a few days after you've discovered the missing money. That way he can act shocked and supportive while you panic. The calculation of it made my stomach turn. How do you know all this? Rebecca's expression darkened. I handled 3 cases like this in my career. Adult children stealing from elderly parents. It's more common than you'd think, and they always follow the same pattern. Gain access, drain the accounts, then play the concerned child when the victim discovers the theft. Did you win those cases? 2 out of 3. Rebecca's jaw tightened. The one I lost. The mother refused to testify against her son. Couldn't bring herself to do it even though we had him dead to rights. He walked away with everything. She looked at me intently. Ella, I need you to understand something. If we do this, if we pursue this legally, you have to be prepared to go all the way. Benjamin will be arrested. He'll go to trial. He might go to prison. Are you ready for that? I tried to imagine sitting in a courtroom testifying against my own son. The looks from family and friends, the judgment, the whispers. But then I imagined living the rest of my life with nothing, having to sell Arthur's house, scraping by on Social Security, becoming dependent on others for basic necessities, all because I was too weak to hold my son accountable. I'm ready, I sadly said. Rebecca squeezed my hand. Okay, then here's what happens next. Tomorrow you go to the bank, get documentation of everything. Then we file a police report and contact the district attorney's office. With your son having power of attorney, this is complicated but not impossible. What about Victoria? If we can prove she masterminded this, and I suspect we can, she'll go down too. Conspiracy to commit fraud, elder abuse, maybe more depending on what we uncover. A thought occurred to me. Rebecca, what if they've already spent the money? What if there's nothing to recover? Then we pursue criminal charges and civil restitution. Either way, they don't get to just walk away from this. Rebecca stayed with me until the sun started setting. By the time she left, I felt steadier. Still heartbroken, still terrified, but no longer drowning. I had a plan. I had support. And I had something else, a kind of cold determination I'd never felt before. Benjamin and Victoria had underestimated me. They saw a naive old woman too trusting and too ignorant to protect herself. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The performance, Saturday evening. Benjamin's car was still in my driveway when I pulled in just after 6. I sat in my car for a full minute, gathering my courage before walking toward my front door. This was it, the performance of my life. Benjamin was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone. He looked up when I walked in, and I had to physically restrain myself from recoiling. How could this man who looked so much like Arthur, the same dark eyes, the same strong jawline, how could he be so different inside? "Hey, Mom," he said, smiling. "Where have you been? I was starting to worry." Liar. The word echoed in my head. You weren't worried. You were probably checking to make sure your theft went through successfully. I went to visit Rebecca, I said, amazed at how normal my voice sounded. You know how she is. Once she starts talking, hours just disappear. Benjamin chuckled. Yeah, Rebecca could talk the ear off a statue. How's she doing? Good. Her arthritis is acting up, but otherwise good. We stood there for a moment in awkward silence. When had things become awkward between us? Or had they always been this way, and I'd just been too blind to see it? So, how are you doing? Benjamin asked. Everything okay? This was my cue, the moment to perform. I thought of what Rebecca had said. Act completely normal. Give him no reason to suspect you know anything. I'm fine, sweetheart. A bit tired. You know, just another Saturday. Good, good. Benjamin seemed to relax slightly. Hey, speaking of finances, and I don't want to stress you out, but when was the last time you checked your bank accounts? My heart stopped. This was it. He was already setting up his alibi. I forced myself to shrug casually, even as my pulse hammered in my ears. Oh, I don't know. I usually wait for the monthly statement to arrive in the mail. Why is something wrong? No, Benjamin said quickly. Too quickly. I worry about you, Mom. About someone hacking your accounts or something. There's a lot of fraud targeting seniors these days. The irony was almost too much to bear. He was literally the fraud targeting this senior, and here he was pretending to protect me from it. That's sweet of you to worry, I said, my voice somehow steady despite the rage building in my chest. But I'm sure everything's fine. The bank would call if there was a problem, wouldn't they? Yeah, of course. Benjamin stood up, grabbing his keys from the coffee table. I should get going. Victoria's making dinner, and you know how she gets if I'm late. I walked him to the door, and he kissed my cheek. His lips felt like poison against my skin. Love you, Mom, he said. Love you too, I replied automatically. The words tasted like ashes. I watched him drive away, then closed the door and slid down it until I was sitting on the floor of my entryway. The performance was over, and I'd survived it. But now, alone in the house I'd shared with Arthur for 45 years, the reality of my situation crashed over me like a wave. My son was a thief. My daughter-in-law was a con artist. And tomorrow I'd have to face the full extent of what they'd done to me. I pulled out my phone and opened the voice memo app following Rebecca's instructions. From now on, every interaction with Benjamin would be recorded. Every conversation documented. I was gathering ammunition for a war I never wanted to fight. But if war was what Benjamin wanted, then war was what he'd get. 10. Sunday morning, the sleepless night. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? I lay in the bed I'd shared with Arthur for 45 years, staring at the ceiling, watching shadows from the streetlight outside dance across the plaster. The same ceiling we'd painted together in 1982. The same room where we'd whispered our dreams and fears and hopes for the future. Arthur should have been here. He would have known what to do. He always knew what to do. But Arthur was gone, and I was alone with this nightmare. Around 3 a.m, I gave up on sleep entirely. I went downstairs and made coffee, then sat at the kitchen table with a pen and paper. Rebecca had told me to document everything, so I started writing. Timeline of manipulation. I titled it, then began listing every moment that should have been a warning sign. 2 years ago, Benjamin introduces Victoria. She asks detailed questions about my finances. 18 months ago, Victoria suggests I update my will, asks about other accounts. 1 year ago, visits become less frequent. Victoria always present when they do come. 6 months ago, Benjamin convinces me to sign power of attorney, says it's just for emergencies. 3 months ago, Benjamin asks repeatedly about my health, seems more interested in my mortality than my well-being. Last month, Victoria asks if I've considered selling the house, moving to a retirement community. The pattern was so obvious now, each step carefully calculated, each conversation designed to assess my assets and expedite access to them. How had I been so blind? But I knew the answer. Love makes you blind. Trust makes you vulnerable. And Benjamin had weaponized both against me. By the time the sun rose Sunday morning, I had 3 pages of notes. Evidence of a long-term plan to systematically rob me of everything I had. I showered and dressed carefully. Gray slacks. A blue cardigan Arthur had always said brought out my eyes. I wanted to look capable, competent. Not like some confused old woman who couldn't manage her own affairs. The bank didn't open until 9 on Sunday's limited hours, but I was in my car by 8:30, too anxious to wait at home. I drove to First National Bank and sat in the parking lot watching the minutes tick by on my dashboard clock. At 8:58, I saw Marcus Chen pull into his reserved spot. He'd been the branch manager for nearly 20 years, and I'd trusted him with my accounts all that time. A good man. Honest. Professional. Please, I prayed to whoever might be listening. Please let him be able to help me. First National Bank, Sunday 9:15 a.m. Marcus looked surprised when I walked in at 9:02 before the lobby had even filled with the usual Sunday morning crowd. Mrs. Martinez, he said, coming around his desk to greet me. This is unexpected. Is everything all right? The concern in his voice almost broke me. I'd held myself together through the sleepless night, through getting dressed through the drive here. But kindness, genuine human kindness, nearly shattered my fragile composure. No, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Everything is not all right. I need to see my account activity. Immediately. Something in my tone made Marcus's professional smile fade. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. Of course. Let me pull up your accounts. I sat down, my hands clenched so tightly in my lap that my knuckles were white. Marcus typed on his computer, and I watched his expression change as he read the screen. Surprise, then confusion, then something that looked like alarm. Mrs. Martinez, he said carefully, I'm seeing some unusual activity on your primary savings account. Unusual how? I asked, though I already knew. I just needed to hear it confirmed. Needed to know the nightmare was real. Marcus turned his monitor so I could see it. There have been 3 large transfers out of your account over the past 2 weeks. The first was 15 days ago for $60,000. The second was 10 days ago for $80,000. And the most recent was yesterday afternoon for $140,000. The numbers swam in front of my eyes. $280,000, just like Benjamin had said on the phone. All 3 transfers, Marcus continued, his voice tense, were made to an account registered to a Victoria Mendoza Hayes. That's your daughter-in-law, correct? Not even to a joint account. Straight to Victoria's personal account. They hadn't even tried to hide it because they'd been so certain I'd never check. Yes, I managed. That's her. Mrs. Martinez, did you authorize these transfers? No, I had no idea they'd been made. Marcus's expression darkened. But your son Benjamin has power of attorney on this account. He authorized all 3 transactions. There it was. The trap I'd walked into 6 months ago when I'd signed those papers, trusting my son completely. Marcus, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady, my son is stealing from me. He and Victoria planned this. I overheard them yesterday discussing how they'd taken all my money, how naive I was, how easy it had been. I watched Marcus process this information. In all the years he'd known me, I'd never been dramatic, never caused problems. I was the reliable customer who came in quarterly, asked sensible questions, managed her money carefully. That's a very serious accusation, he said slowly. It's not an accusation. It's the truth. I leaned forward. Marcus, I need you to help me. I need to freeze that account. I need to stop them from transferring any more money. And I need documentation of every transaction Benjamin has made. Marcus ran his hand through his hair, clearly struggling with the situation. Mrs. Martinez, this is complicated. Your son has legal authority to make these transfers. From the bank's perspective, nothing improper has occurred. From the bank's perspective, maybe. But legally, morally, Marcus, he used the power I gave him in good faith to rob me blind. That has to be a crime. It is, Marcus said quietly. If you're alleging misuse of power of attorney, that's elder financial abuse. It's a felony. But to freeze the account and reverse the transfers, you'll need to file a formal police report and potentially get a court order. The words hung in the air between us. Police report. Court order. This was really happening. Can you at least freeze the account now? I asked. So he can't take anything else? Marcus hesitated, then nodded. Yes. I can temporarily freeze it pending investigation of suspected fraud. But Mrs. Martinez, you need to understand this will alert your son that something's wrong. Once he tries to access the account and can't, he'll know you're on to him. Good, I said, and I meant it. Let him know. Let him panic. I want him to feel a fraction of what I felt yesterday when I heard him laughing about destroying me. Marcus typed something on his computer. Done. The account is frozen. No one can access it, including you, until this is resolved. He paused. What about the money that's already been transferred, the $280,000 in Victoria's account? Can you freeze that too? Not directly, it's a different account at a different bank. But if you file a police report alleging fraud, the authorities can request that her bank freeze it pending investigation. The faster you act, the better chance you have of recovering the money before she moves it somewhere we can't track. Before she moves it somewhere we can't track. The words sent a chill through me. Victoria had done this before I was certain of it now. She had a plan. Probably offshore accounts, untraceable transfers, a whole infrastructure set up for stealing and disappearing. How quickly can I get documentation of all this? I asked. I need proof before I go to the police. Marcus was already printing. I'm generating a complete report of all activity on your account for the past 6 months. It'll show the 3 large transfers, but also... He paused, looking at the screen. Mrs. Martinez, there are other transactions here. Smaller ones, going back almost 4 months. My stomach dropped. What kind of transactions? Transfers to Benjamin's personal account. $5,000 here, $12,000 there. They started small, a few $100s, then gradually increased. It looks like he was testing, seeing if you'd notice. And I hadn't. I'd been so trusting, so convinced my son would never betray me that I'd never even checked. The printer whirred, spitting out page after page of transactions. Marcus gathered them into a folder and handed it to me. This is everything. Every withdrawal, every transfer, every access to your account for the past 6 months. I took the folder with shaking hands. This was evidence. Proof of Benjamin's betrayal in black and white. There's something else you should know, Marcus said quietly. Yesterday afternoon, about an hour after that final transfer, there was an attempted withdrawal from Victoria's account. She tried to transfer $100,000 to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. My blood ran cold. It was flagged by our fraud detection system because of the amount and the international destination. We temporarily held it pending verification, but that hold expires in 48 hours. If she verifies it's legitimate, the transfer will go through. 48 hours. 2 days to stop Victoria from moving my money somewhere I could never recover it. Marcus, what do I do? He looked at me with genuine sympathy. You file a police report today. Right now, if possible. You contact the district attorney's office. And you get a lawyer. A good one. I thought of Rebecca. I have a lawyer. She's already helping me. Good. Then listen to her advice and move fast. Mrs. Martinez, I've been in banking for 30 years, and I've seen cases like this before. The victims who recover their money are the ones who act immediately and decisively. The ones who hesitate, who can't bring themselves to prosecute family members who hope for reconciliation. He shook his head. They usually end up with nothing. I stood up, clutching the folder to my chest like armor. Thank you, Marcus, for everything. I'm sorry this is happening to you, he said. For what it's worth, I always liked Benjamin. I never would have suspected. Neither would I said. That's what makes it so effective. The phone call to Rebecca, Sunday, 10:30 a.m. I called Rebecca from the bank parking lot, my hands still shaking. I just left the bank, I said when she answered. It's all true, every word I heard. $280,000. Gone. I'm coming over, Rebecca said immediately. Don't go home. Don't talk to anyone. Just wait for me. Where are you? First National Bank parking lot. Stay there. I'll be there in 20 minutes. She arrived in 15, pulling up next to my car and getting into my passenger seat without a word. I handed her the folder Marcus had given me, and she started reading through the transaction reports. I watched her face as she read, watched the anger build with each page. That calculating bastard, she muttered. He started small, testing to see if you'd notice. When you didn't, he got bolder. She flipped to another page. And look at this, the timing of the large transfers. Right after he visited you. He'd come to your house, probably ask about your health, your plans, gather information. Then boom, another transfer the next day. The pattern was sickeningly clear. Rebecca Marcus said Victoria tried to move money to the Cayman Islands yesterday. She has 48 hours before the transfer goes through. Rebecca's head snapped up. Cayman Islands. That's not amateur hour. That's sophisticated money laundering. She pulled out her phone. I'm calling Claire Davidson. She's a prosecutor with the DA's office. Specializes in financial crimes. We went to law school together. On a Sunday. For something like this, she'll answer. Rebecca was right. After a brief conversation, she hung up and looked at me. Claire can see us in an hour, at her office. She's coming in specifically for this. On Sunday? I repeated, stunned. Elder financial abuse is taken very seriously in Massachusetts, especially when there's evidence of organized fraud. And Ella, if Victoria has offshore accounts set up, this might be bigger than just you. District Attorney's Office, Sunday, 11:30 a.m. Claire Davidson was nothing like I expected. She was young, maybe 40, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She met us in the lobby of the District Attorney's office, which was eerily quiet on a Sunday morning. Mrs. Martinez, she said, shaking my hand firmly, Rebecca's told me a bit about your situation. Why don't we go to my office and you can tell me everything? Her office was small but organized walls covered with framed degrees and commendations. She gestured for us to sit, then pulled out a yellow legal pad. Start from the beginning, she said. Don't leave anything out. So I told her everything. The overheard phone call, the power of attorney, the bank statements, Victoria's questions, Benjamin's gradual distancing, all of it. Claire took notes, constantly, occasionally asking clarifying questions. This Victoria Hayes, she said. How long have she and your son been married? 2 years. They met at a business conference. And you said she asked very specific questions about your finances. Yes. What bank I used, how much I had in savings, whether I had other assets. At the time, I thought she was just trying to be helpful. Claire and Rebecca exchanged a look that made my stomach drop. What I asked. What is it? Claire set down her pen. Mrs. Martinez, I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before you answer. In the time Victoria has been with your son, have you noticed any other unusual behavior? Has she mentioned previous relationships? Other family members? Not really. She said her mother died when she was young, that she'd always wanted a close relationship with a mother-in-law. The memory of Victoria's tears on our first meeting made me feel sick now. Why? Because what you're describing, the methodical questions, the isolation tactics, the power of attorney suggestion, the offshore account that's not amateur theft, that's a practiced pattern, a con. The word hung in the air. Con. You think she's done this before? Rebecca asked. I think it's very possible. Claire turned to her computer and started typing. Victoria Hayes, you said married to Benjamin Martinez. Yes. Claire's fingers flew across the keyboard. I'm checking our database for any previous complaints or investigations. She paused, leaning closer to the screen. Nothing under Victoria Hayes, but let me try some variations. She typed for several more minutes while Rebecca and I sat in tense silence. Then Claire's expression changed. Got something, she said quietly. Not Victoria Hayes, Victoria Mendoza. That was her maiden name, right? I think so. I said, trying to remember the wedding invitation. 4 years ago, there was a complaint filed in Connecticut. A man named Harold Brennan alleged that his son's wife, a woman named Victoria Mendoza, had convinced his son to steal money from him. Over $100,000. My heart stopped. What happened? The case was dropped. Mr. Brennan refused to testify against his son. Without his cooperation, we couldn't prosecute. Claire looked at me seriously. But the pattern described in the complaint is identical to what you're experiencing. Gaining the son's trust, manipulating him into accessing the father's money, then disappearing. Disappearing, I repeated. Victoria and the son Daniel Brennan divorced 6 months after the theft. She got her share of the stolen money in the settlement and vanished. We tried to locate her for follow-up investigation, but she'd moved, changed jobs, left no trail. Rebecca leaned forward. And now she's resurfaced, with a new husband, targeting another elderly parent. So it seems, Claire said. Mrs. Martinez, this changes everything. If we can prove Victoria has a pattern of this behavior, we're not just looking at one count of elder abuse. We're looking at organized fraud, possibly RICO charges if we can connect her to a larger network. RICO. I didn't know exactly what that meant, but it sounded serious. What about Benjamin? I asked quietly. My son. Is he a victim too, or? Claire's expression softened slightly. That's complicated. He may have been manipulated by Victoria initially, but Mrs. Martinez, he made the choice to transfer that money. He laughed about it on the phone. Even if Victoria pushed him into it, he's still culpable. I nodded, feeling numb. Part of me had been hoping Claire would say Benjamin was innocent, a victim of Victoria's manipulation, that somehow I could get my son back. But that wasn't the truth, and I needed to face it. What happens now? I asked. Claire started making a list. First, we file a formal police report. I'll expedite it through my contacts. Second, I'm going to request an emergency court order to freeze Victoria's accounts. All of them. If she has offshore accounts set up, we need to move fast. Third, we need to locate Harold Brennan. If he's willing to testify now, his testimony combined with your case will be powerful evidence of Victoria's pattern. And Benjamin? He'll be arrested, Claire said bluntly. Probably within 48 hours. Mrs. Martinez, I need you to understand what you're signing up for. Your son will be charged with elder financial abuse, which is a felony. He could face 5 to 10 years in prison. 5 to 10 years. My son, in prison. I understand, I said, and I was surprised by how steady my voice was. Are you prepared to testify against him in court in front of everyone? I thought of Arthur, of the pharmacy we'd built, of 45 years of hard work that Benjamin had stolen in a matter of weeks. Yes, I said, I'm prepared. Claire studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, let's do this. The police report. Sunday, 1:00 p.m. Filing the police report took 2 hours. I had to tell the story multiple times, first to the desk sergeant, then to a detective, then to another detective who specialized in financial crimes. Detective Sarah Walsh was in her 50s with tired eyes that had seen too much. But when I told her about Benjamin's phone call about his laugh, something in her expression hardened. "I hate these cases," she said quietly. "Hate them, because the victims are always torn between wanting justice and wanting their family back." "I don't want my family back," I said. "Not this family, not the son who could do this to me. I want my money back, and I want him to pay for what he's done." Detective Walsh nodded approvingly. "Good. Then we'll make sure that happens." She pulled out a recording device. "Now I need you to tell me everything one more time. On the record. Every detail you can remember about Victoria's questions, Benjamin's behavior, the phone call you overheard. Everything." So I did. Again. By the time we finished, it was nearly 3 in the afternoon, and I was exhausted. But Detective Walsh seemed energized. "This is solid," she said, reviewing her notes. "Really solid. With the bank records, the witness testimony from you, and if we can get Harold Brennan to cooperate, we have a strong case." "What about Victoria trying to transfer money to the Cayman Islands?" I asked. "I'm calling her bank right now to flag that transaction as part of an active fraud investigation. That'll freeze it indefinitely." She picked up her phone and started dialing. "And I'm issuing a warrant for both Benjamin Martinez and Victoria Hayes. They'll be arrested within 24 hours. 24 hours. Tomorrow my son would be arrested." Rebecca drove me home as the sun started to set. We'd been dealing with lawyers and police for nearly 9 hours, and I felt hollowed out, empty. "Are you okay?" Rebecca asked as we pulled up to my house. "No," I said honestly. "But I will be." She walked me to my door and hugged me tightly. "You're doing the right thing, Ella. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you are." "Thank you," I whispered. "For everything." After Rebecca left, I stood in my entryway looking at my quiet house. The home I'd shared with Arthur. The home where I'd raised Benjamin. The home that suddenly felt like a museum of a life that no longer existed. My phone rang. Benjamin. I stared at his name on the screen, debating whether to answer. Then I remembered record everything. I opened my voice memo app, started recording, and answered the call. "Hi, sweetheart," I said, amazed at how normal I sounded. "Hey, Mom." Benjamin's voice was tense, strained. "Listen, I tried to access your bank account today to check on something and it's frozen. Do you know anything about that?" So Marcus had been right. The freeze had alerted him immediately. "Frozen," I said, feigning confusion. "No, I don't know anything about that. Why would it be frozen?" "I don't know. The bank said there's some kind of fraud investigation. But that doesn't make sense. Unless..." He paused. "Mom, did you report something? Did you think someone was stealing from you?" The irony of the question was almost too much to bear. "Yes, Benjamin. Someone is stealing from me. You." "No," I lied smoothly. "I haven't reported anything. Maybe it's just a bank error. These things happen." Yeah, maybe." He didn't sound convinced. "Mom, I'm going to come by tomorrow and we'll go to the bank together. Figure this out. Okay?" "That sounds good, dear." "Okay. I love you, Mom." The words felt like poison. "Love you too." I hung up and stopped the recording. My hands were shaking again. Tomorrow, Benjamin would come to my house, planning to maintain his innocent facade, planning to help his poor, confused mother sort out this bank error. But tomorrow he'd be arrested instead, and I would watch it happen. Twist number 3. Harold Brennan surfaces. Sunday evening, 6:00 p.m. I was sitting at my kitchen table, staring at a cup of tea I had no intention of drinking when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Mrs. Martinez." A man's voice. Elderly. Uncertain. "Yes. My name is Harold Brennan. The district attorney's office gave me your number. They said you're going through something similar to what happened to me. With Victoria." I sat up straighter. The previous victim. The man from Connecticut. "Mr. Brennan," I said. "Yes. I'm very sorry for what happened to you." "I'm sorry for what's happening to you," he replied. His voice cracked slightly. "Mrs. Martinez, I need to tell you something. something I should have done 4 years ago. What is it? I should have fought back. I should have testified against my son, against her. But I was ashamed, humiliated that my own boy could do that to me. And I was scared that if I sent him to prison, I'd lose him forever. He paused, and I could hear him struggling with emotion. So I stayed quiet. I let them take everything. And you know what happened? I lost him anyway. Daniel took the money and ran. Haven't heard from him in 4 years. He's somewhere in South America, I think, living off what he stole from me. I'm so sorry, I whispered. Don't be sorry for me. Be smarter than me. Harold's voice grew stronger. When the prosecutor called today and told me Victoria had resurfaced that she was doing this to someone else, I felt sick. Because if I'd spoken up 4 years ago, she'd be in prison right now. She wouldn't have been able to hurt you. Mr. Brennan, this isn't your fault. Maybe not, but I can help now. Mrs. Martinez, I called to tell you that I'll testify. Whatever you need from me. I'll tell the court everything she did. How she manipulated Daniel. How she asked the same questions, used the same tactics. I'll make sure she pays for what she's done. Tears started rolling down my cheeks. Thank you, I managed. Thank you so much. We're going to stop her, Harold said firmly. Together. We're going to make sure she never does this to anyone else. After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen and cried. But this time they weren't tears of despair. They were tears of relief, of solidarity, of hope. I wasn't alone in this. Harold Brennan had survived Victoria's con and was willing to fight alongside me. Monday morning, the arrest, 9:00 a.m. I didn't sleep Sunday night either. I was too keyed up, too anxious about what was coming. Rebecca arrived at my house at 8:30 Monday morning. Claire called, she said. The arrests are happening at 10. She thought you'd want to know. Will they come here to arrest Benjamin? No. They're picking him up at his house. Victoria, too. Part of me was relieved. I didn't want to see it happen. But another part of me felt cheated. After everything Benjamin had done, shouldn't I get to witness his arrest? My phone rang at 10:47. Claire Davidson. It's done, she said without preamble. Both in custody. They're being processed now. How did Benjamin react? I asked, not sure I wanted to know. He seemed shocked. Kept insisting it was a misunderstanding, that he had power of attorney and every right to manage your money. And Victoria, silent, didn't say a word, asked for a lawyer immediately. Claire paused. Mrs. Martinez, there's something else. When they searched Victoria's house, they found files, documents about other elderly people in the Boston area, names, addresses, financial information. We think she was planning her next targets. The room spun around me. How many people? At least a dozen. We're contacting them all now to verify their information is secure. A dozen families, a dozen potential victims, and I'd almost been just another name in her files. There's more, Claire continued. We found evidence of wire transfers to an account in Romania. Substantial amounts. We think Victoria might be part of a larger organization, an international fraud ring. Twist number 6, the criminal network revealed. International, I repeated, stunned. We're still investigating, but it looks like Victoria doesn't work alone. She's part of a network that specializes in romance scams and elder fraud. They target vulnerable people, drain their accounts, then move the money through multiple countries to make it untraceable. How much money are we talking about? From what we can trace so far, over $2 million across multiple victims over the past decade. $2 million. Victoria wasn't just a con artist. She was a professional criminal. The good news, Claire said, is that we've frozen all her domestic accounts. The $280,000 she took from you is still accessible. We should be able to return it to you once the case is resolved. And the money she sent overseas? That's trickier, but we're working with international agencies. There's a chance we can recover at least some of it. After I hung up with Claire, I looked at Rebecca. Did you hear all that? Yeah, she said quietly. Ella, you may have just helped take down a major criminal operation. By speaking up, by refusing to stay silent, you've potentially saved dozens of other families. The thought was overwhelming. All I'd wanted was my money back. Justice for what Benjamin and Victoria had done to me. But now I was part of something much bigger. Rebecca, I said slowly, Harold Brennan said he felt responsible because he didn't speak up. because if he had, Victoria would be in prison already. That's not his fault. I know, but I don't want anyone else to feel that way. I don't want another family to go through what we've gone through because I stayed quiet. Rebecca smiled. What are you thinking? I'm thinking maybe this isn't just about me anymore. The media attention, Monday afternoon. By Monday afternoon, news of the arrests had leaked to the press. My phone started ringing with reporters asking for comments. I didn't answer, but Claire called to warn me. Mrs. Martinez, this case is getting attention. Elder abuse by adult children, organized fraud rings. It's the kind of story that resonates with people. You should prepare for media interest. I don't want to talk to reporters, I said firmly. I understand, but you might want to consider it eventually. Your story could help other victims recognize the warning signs, could encourage them to come forward. I thought about that, about all the people who might be sitting in their homes right now confused about missing money, trusting their children, despite red flags too ashamed to speak up. Maybe, I said, but not yet. Not while this is all so fresh. Fair enough. In the meantime, Benjamin and Victoria are being arraigned tomorrow morning. You can attend if you want, but you don't have to. Did I want to see Benjamin in court? In handcuffs facing charges for what he'd done to me, part of me did. Part of me needed to see him held accountable. I'll be there, I said. The first conversation, Monday evening. Rebecca stayed with me most of Monday, deflecting phone calls and helping me process everything that had happened. By evening, I was exhausted emotionally, physically, mentally. You should eat something, Rebecca said, rummaging through my refrigerator. When's the last time you had a real meal? I couldn't remember. Food seemed irrelevant compared to everything else. Rebecca made scrambled eggs and toast, and I forced myself to eat a few bites. We were sitting at the kitchen table when my phone buzzed with a text message. From Benjamin. Mom, please. I need to talk to you. This is all a huge misunderstanding. I showed the text to Rebecca. Don't respond, she said immediately. Anything you say can be used in court, by him or against him. I know. Part of me wants to hear what he has to say, what possible explanation he could have. There is no explanation that justifies what he did, Ella. She was right. But the mother in me, the part that had loved Benjamin for 50 years, still wanted to believe there was some misunderstanding. Some way this could all make sense. Another text came through. Victoria manipulated me. I know that's not an excuse, but it's the truth. She made me believe we were just redistributing family money, that you had more than you needed. I'm so sorry, Mom. Please talk to me. He's trying to set up his defense, Rebecca said, reading over my shoulder. Blaming Victoria for everything, making himself out to be a victim too. Is he a victim, I mean? Rebecca considered the question. Maybe initially. Victoria clearly targeted him because you had money. She probably did manipulate him at first, but Ella, you heard him on that phone call. He was laughing. He knew exactly what he was doing and he enjoyed it. She was right. The Benjamin on that phone call hadn't sounded manipulated. He'd sounded triumphant. I turned off my phone without responding. Nay. Twist number 4, the 72-hour deadline, Tuesday morning. Tuesday morning, I woke to my phone ringing. Marcus Chen from the bank. Mrs. Martinez, I thought you should know Victoria's attorney is challenging our freeze on her accounts. They're arguing that since the money was legally transferred by someone with power of attorney, we have no right to hold it. My stomach dropped. Can they do that, Anne? They're trying. There's a hearing this afternoon. Claire Davidson is representing the state's interest, but he paused. Mrs. Martinez, if the judge rules in Victoria's favor, she could have access to that money again. And if she transfers it offshore before we can stop her, it's gone. What are our chances? Honestly, it depends on the judge. Some see power of attorney as absolute. Others understand the nuance of abuse. It's a coin flip. After I hung up, I called Claire immediately. I know about the hearing, she said. I'm preparing arguments now. Mrs. Martinez, I want you there. The judge needs to see you, needs to understand that you're not some abstract victim, but a real person whose life has been destroyed by this. I'll be there, I said. The hearing was at 2 p.m. in Suffolk County Courthouse. Rebecca drove me, and we met Claire outside the courtroom. Quick overview, Claire said, speaking rapidly. Victoria's lawyer is going to argue that Benjamin had legal authority to transfer the money, therefore it's legally Victoria's. I'm going to argue that the power of attorney was obtained through fraud and misrepresentation, therefore the transfers are void. The judge will decide. What happens if we lose? Claire's expression was grim. Then Victoria gets access to the money, and I guarantee you it'll be in the Cayman Islands within hours. Once it's there, recovery becomes almost impossible. We entered the courtroom. It was smaller than I expected, paneled in dark wood with the state seal behind the judge's bench. Victoria was already there with her lawyer, a sharp-dressed man in his 50s who exuded expensive competence. She looked different. Gone was the sweet, vulnerable daughter-in-law. This woman was cold, calculating. Her real face. She glanced at me once, and I saw no remorse in her eyes, only irritation at being caught. Benjamin wasn't there. Apparently, he had a separate hearing for the criminal charges. Judge Patricia Morrison took the bench, a black woman in her 60s, with an expression that gave nothing away. "Let's keep this brief," she said. "Ms. Davidson, you're arguing the account freeze should remain in place." "Yes, Your Honor." Claire stood. The money in question, $280,000, was obtained through elder financial abuse. Mrs. Ella Martinez gave her son power of attorney in good faith for emergency use only. Instead, he systematically drained her accounts over several months and transferred the funds to his wife, the defendant Victoria Hayes. Victoria's lawyer, Mr. Berkowitz, stood. "Your Honor, the power of attorney was legal and properly executed. Mr. Martinez had every right to manage his mother's funds. How he chose to do so is a family matter, not a criminal one." "Not when it constitutes theft," Claire shot back. "And, Your Honor, there's more. We have evidence that Ms. Hayes has done this before. 4 years ago in Connecticut, she was involved in a nearly identical scheme that netted over $100,000 from an elderly victim." Judge Morrison's eyebrows rose. "Is there a conviction on record?" "No, Your Honor. The victim declined to press charges. But we have the complaint, and we have that victim willing to testify now." "Allegations," Mr. Berkowitz said dismissively. "No convictions. Your Honor, my client is the victim here of an elderly woman's confusion and a district attorney's overzealousness." "I am not confused," I said loudly. Everyone turned to look at me. Judge Morrison leaned forward. "Mrs. Martinez, I presume?" I stood up, my legs shaking, but my voice steady. "Yes, Your Honor, and I want to say something." Claire looked alarmed. Apparently spontaneous testimony wasn't part of her plan. But Judge Morrison gestured for me to continue. "I'm 70 years old," I said. "I ran a successful pharmacy for 45 years with my husband. I managed our finances, our employees, our inventory. I'm not senile. I'm not confused. And I know exactly what my son and that woman did to me." I pointed at Victoria, who stared back with cold eyes. "They planned this. They manipulated me into trusting them. They stole my life savings money my husband and I worked 45 years to earn, and now they want to keep it because of a legal technicality." My voice broke slightly, but I pushed on. "Your Honor, if you release that freeze, that money will be gone within hours, and I'll have nothing. At 70 years old, I'll have to start over with nothing because I made the mistake of trusting my own son." The courtroom was silent. Judge Morrison studied me for a long moment, then looked at Victoria's lawyer. "Mr. Berkowitz, your client had offshore accounts set up and ready. She attempted to transfer funds to the Cayman Islands within 24 hours of receiving them. That suggests premeditation, not innocent money management." "Circumstantial, Your Honor." "Perhaps. But combined with Mrs. Martinez's testimony and the pattern of behavior Ms. Davidson has outlined, I'm inclined to err on the side of caution." Judge Morrison picked up her gavel. "The account freeze remains in place pending resolution of the criminal case. If Ms. Hayes is acquitted, we'll revisit the matter. Until then, that money stays exactly where it is." The gavel came down. Claire exhaled in relief. I felt my knees buckle, and Rebecca caught my arm. We'd won, for now. But as we left the courthouse, Victoria's eyes followed me, and the look in them promised this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Tuesday evening. The letter. I returned home from the courthouse feeling hollowed out. Victory should have felt good, but all I felt was exhausted. Rebecca offered to stay, but I needed to be alone, to process everything in the quiet of the house I'd shared with Arthur. "Call me if you need anything," Rebecca said, hugging me at the door. "Anything at all, even if it's 3 in the morning." "I will. Thank you." After she left, I made tea I didn't drink and sat in Arthur's chair, the worn leather recliner in the living room where he'd read the newspaper every evening for 40 years. I could still smell his aftershave if I closed my eyes, still hear his voice. What would you do, Arthur, I thought. What would you tell me to do? But Arthur was gone, and I was alone with decisions that felt impossible. My doorbell rang at 7 p.m. I wasn't expecting anyone and almost didn't answer. But when I peered through the peephole, I saw a young man in a suit holding an envelope. "Mrs. Martinez," he asked when I opened the door. "I'm Jeremy Cole, Benjamin Martinez's attorney. He asked me to deliver this to you personally." He handed me a thick envelope. Through the paper, I could feel something bulky inside. "What is this?" "A letter from your son. He wanted you to have it before tomorrow's arraignment." The lawyer's expression was carefully neutral. "He's hoping you'll read it with an open mind." After he left, I stood in my entryway holding the envelope like it might explode. Part of me wanted to throw it away unread. But another part, the mother who'd loved Benjamin for 50 years, needed to know what he had to say. I opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter, multiple pages in Benjamin's familiar scrawl. And something else, a small photo. I picked it up and felt my breath catch. It was from Benjamin's 8th birthday. Arthur and I stood on either side of him, our arms around his shoulders. All three of us were laughing at something the photographer had said. We looked so happy, so complete, so completely unaware of how this story would end. I sat down and began reading. Benjamin's letter. "Mom, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I know you have every right to hate me. But I'm asking you to read this. Not for me, for you. Because you deserve the whole truth, even if it doesn't change anything. I met Victoria 2.5 years ago at that conference in Chicago. She was beautiful, confident, successful. Everything I wasn't. My consulting business was failing. I was drowning in debt, credit cards, business loans, a mortgage I couldn't afford. I was 50 years old and felt like I'd accomplished nothing. Victoria seemed to see potential in me. She made me feel important, valued. We talked for hours that first night, and she asked about my family. I told her about you and Dad, about the pharmacy, about how you'd built this successful business from nothing. I didn't realize I was being assessed, evaluated for my usefulness. She asked to meet you right away, which seemed sweet at the time, like she wanted to know my family. Now I understand she wanted to see if you were a viable target. The questions started immediately. How much money did you have? What were your health issues? Did you have a will? I thought she was just thorough, detail-oriented, the kind of person who plans for the future. I was so stupid, Mom. So blind. 6 months into our relationship, Victoria told me she was pregnant. I was thrilled, terrified, but thrilled. We got married, quickly planned for the baby. Then she had a miscarriage at 10 weeks. Except I don't think there ever was a baby. I think that was part of the plan too. Get me married and committed before I could think too clearly. The power of attorney idea came from her. "Your mother's getting older," she'd say. "What if something happens you need to be able to help her?" She made it sound responsible, loving, and I believed her because I wanted to, because she made me feel like I was finally taking care of someone instead of being a failure. The first transfer was my idea, sort of. Victoria and I were drowning financially. The house was going into foreclosure. My business was bankrupt. We needed money desperately. "Your mother has more than enough," Victoria said, "and it's all going to be yours eventually anyway. Why not take a small loan now? You can pay it back later." A small loan. That's how it started. $5,000. You never noticed, so Victoria suggested trying again. $12,000 this time. Still nothing. Each time it got easier. Each time I convinced myself it wasn't really stealing because the money would be mine someday anyway. I was just accelerating my inheritance. God, Mom, writing that out makes me sick. What kind of person thinks that way? The big transfers were Victoria's plan. "She's 70 years old," Victoria said. "She doesn't need all that money. Let's move it somewhere safe, somewhere we can invest it and grow it. We'll give her a monthly allowance, take care of all her bills. She'll never have to worry about money again." She made it sound like we were helping you, protecting you. And I wanted to believe it because the alternative was admitting I was stealing from my own mother. That phone call you overheard, the one where I laughed Mom, I was performing. Playing a role Victoria expected. She was always testing me, making sure I was committed to our future. If I showed weakness, showed guilt, she'd threaten to leave. to take everything and disappear. I was terrified of losing her because without her, I'd have to face what I really was, a 50-year-old failure who'd betrayed the person who loved him most. But here's the truth I need you to know. Even if Victoria manipulated me, even if she pushed me into it, I made the choice. Every transfer, every lie, every time I looked you in the eye and pretended to care about your well-being while robbing you blind, those were my choices. I can blame Victoria all I want, but I'm the one who did it. I'm the one who betrayed you. And I'm sorry, Mom. I know that's not enough. I know sorry doesn't give you back the money or the trust or the son you thought you had. But I need you to know that I never stopped loving you. I just loved money more. And that makes me a monster. Tomorrow they're going to arraign me. My lawyer says I should plead guilty, cooperate with the prosecution against Victoria. He says if I do, I might get a reduced sentence. 5 years instead of 10. I'm going to do it. Not to save myself, I deserve whatever punishment I get, but because Victoria needs to pay for what she's done. Not just to you, but to Harold Brennan, to whoever else she's destroyed. I know you'll never forgive me. I don't deserve forgiveness, but I hope someday you can find peace. I love you, Mom. I always will. Benjamin chapter 18. The weight of words. I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. Part of me wanted to crumple it up, throw it away, pretend I'd never read it. Because Benjamin's words made him human again. Made me remember the little boy who'd brought me dandelions, the teenager who'd called from college just to hear my voice. But another part of me, the part that had heard him laugh about my naivety, knew the truth. Benjamin might be sorry now, but he hadn't been sorry when he was stealing from me. He'd been triumphant. The letter was manipulation. A different kind than Victoria's maybe, but manipulation nonetheless. Benjamin was trying to salvage something, our relationship, his conscience, his image of himself as not completely evil. I set the letter aside and picked up the photograph again. That happy family, Arthur, Benjamin, and me, felt like fiction, a story I'd told myself about who we were. But it had never been real. Or maybe it had been real once and then broke somewhere along the way, and I'd been too busy, too trusting, too loving to notice. My phone buzzed. A text from Claire Davidson. Arraignment tomorrow at 10 a.m. Benjamin's lawyer contacted me. He wants to make a deal, full cooperation against Victoria in exchange for reduced charges. Your thoughts. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed my response. Let him cooperate, but I want to speak at his sentencing. I want him to hear what he's done to me. Claire's response came quickly. Agreed. See you tomorrow. Wednesday morning, the arraignment. Rebecca picked me up at 8:30. I'd barely slept, but I'd dressed carefully. Navy suit, pearl earrings Arthur gave me for our 20th anniversary. I wanted to look dignified, strong, not like a victim. Are you ready for this? Rebecca asked as we drove toward the courthouse. No, I said honestly. But I'm going anyway. The courthouse was already crowded when we arrived. Media vans lined the street. Apparently the story of a son and his con artist wife stealing from an elderly mother had captured public attention. A reporter shoved a microphone toward me as I walked up the steps. Mrs. Martinez, how does it feel to see your son charged with stealing from you? No comment, Rebecca said firmly, steering me past. Inside, Claire was waiting. The media circus is intense, she said. This case is resonating with people. We've already received calls from 3 other potential victims of Victoria's, all elderly parents of men she dated years ago. 3 more, I said, shocked. At least, we're still investigating. Claire lowered her voice. Ella, I need to prepare you. Benjamin is pleading guilty today. He's going to allocate. That means he'll have to describe what he did in open court. It might be difficult to hear. I can handle it. We entered the courtroom. It was packed reporters, curious onlookers, other victims' families. I took a seat in the front row with Rebecca, and moments later they brought Benjamin in. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit, handcuffs. His hair was messy, and he had dark circles under his eyes. When he saw me, his face crumpled. He mouthed something I couldn't hear. Maybe, I'm sorry, maybe Mom. I looked away. Judge Morrison took the bench, the same judge from yesterday's hearing. She surveyed the crowded courtroom with a stern expression. This is an arraignment, not a circus, she said sharply. Anyone who can't maintain proper decorum will be removed. The bailiff brought Victoria in next. Unlike Benjamin, she looked composed. Perfectly styled hair, minimal makeup. She'd changed her appearance to look softer, more sympathetic. But when her eyes swept the courtroom, I saw the calculation behind them. She was already planning her defense. Benjamin's allocution. Judge Morrison addressed Benjamin first. Mr. Martinez, you've indicated you wish to plead guilty to the charge of elder financial abuse in the first degree. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor, Benjamin said. His voice was hoarse. And you understand that by pleading guilty, you're waiving your right to a trial. Yes, Your Honor. Very well. Please allocute to the crime. Describe in your own words what you did. Benjamin swallowed hard. His lawyer whispered something to him, and he nodded. Your Honor, over the course of 6 months, I used the power of attorney my mother had given me to transfer money from her bank account without her knowledge or permission. The total amount was $280,000. His voice broke slightly. I transferred this money to my wife's account with the intention of keeping it for our personal use. My mother trusted me to help her manage her finances, and I betrayed that trust. I stole from her. Judge Morrison's expression was hard. Why did you do it, Mr. Martinez? Benjamin looked at me then, really looked at me. And I saw something in his eyes I hadn't seen in the letter, genuine remorse. Or maybe I just wanted to see it. I was desperate, Your Honor. I was in debt, my business was failing, and I convinced myself that I deserved the money. That my mother had more than enough. That I was just taking what would be mine eventually. He paused. But those were lies I told myself to justify doing something I knew was wrong. I stole from my mother because I'm selfish and weak. And I'm sorry. The courtroom was silent. Your apology doesn't undo the harm, Judge Morrison said. Mrs. Martinez, would you like to address the court? I stood up, my legs shaking. Claire hadn't mentioned I'd have a chance to speak now, but I wasn't going to waste it. Your Honor, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Benjamin is my only son. I raised him. I loved him. I would have given him anything if he'd just asked. I looked directly at Benjamin. But he didn't ask. He stole. He lied. And when I discovered what he'd done, he was going to pretend to be surprised, to help his poor, confused mother figure out where her money went. Benjamin's face crumpled and tears started rolling down his cheeks. That money represented 45 years of hard work. My late husband and I built a life together, and Benjamin took it as if it meant nothing. As if I meant nothing. My voice hardened. I don't know if I'll ever forgive him. But I know he needs to face the consequences of what he's done. Not just for me, but for every other parent who trusted their child and was betrayed. I sat down. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Morrison banged her gavel. Order. She looked at Benjamin. Mr. Martinez, I'm accepting your guilty plea. Sentencing will be scheduled for 6 weeks from today. Until then, you'll remain in custody. She turned to Victoria. Ms. Hayes, how do you plead to the charges of conspiracy to commit elder financial abuse, grand larceny, and participating in an organized fraud scheme? Victoria stood, and when she spoke, her voice was sweet, innocent, completely false. Not guilty, Your Honor. I'm a victim here, too. Benjamin manipulated me just as he manipulated his mother. I had no idea the money was stolen. Claire stood immediately. Your Honor, that's demonstrably false. We have evidence of Ms. Hayes's involvement in at least 3 other similar schemes dating back 10 years. She has a pattern of targeting men with elderly parents, manipulating them into stealing from family members, then disappearing with the money. Alleged pattern, Victoria's lawyer interjected. There are no convictions. Because the victims were too ashamed to testify, Claire shot back. But we have one of those victims here today. Harold Brennan, will you please stand? An elderly man in the back row stood up. He was probably 75, with white hair and sad eyes that looked like they'd seen too much. Mr. Brennan, Claire said, would you like to tell the court about your experience with Victoria Hayes? Twist number 5, Harold's revelation. Harold walked slowly to the front of the courtroom. His hands were shaking, but his voice was clear. 4 years ago, he began, my son Daniel met a woman named Victoria Mendoza. That's her sitting right there. He pointed at Victoria, whose expression remained neutral. She convinced Daniel to marry her quickly, within 6 months. Then she started asking questions about me, about my money, my health, my plans for the future. Harold's voice grew stronger. She manipulated my son into believing I was too old to manage my own finances, that he needed to take control for my own good. and Daniel, God help him, believed her. Over the course of a year, they stole $123,000 from me, my life savings, money I'd worked 50 years to earn. The courtroom was completely silent. When I confronted Daniel, Victoria stood there and smiled, actually smiled. Then she told my son I was senile, that I didn't remember giving him permission to move the money. She made him choose between believing me or believing her. Harold's voice broke. He chose her. My own son chose her over me. They divorced 6 months later, Harold continued. Victoria took half the stolen money in the settlement and disappeared. I haven't seen my son in 4 years. Don't know where he is. Don't know if he's alive or dead. He looked at Victoria with pure hatred. I stayed silent because I was ashamed, because I couldn't face admitting my son had betrayed me. But when the prosecutor called and told me Victoria was doing this to someone else, I knew I had to speak up. Harold turned to face me. Mrs. Martinez, I'm sorry. If I'd testified 4 years ago, you wouldn't be sitting here now. Victoria would be in prison where she belongs. It's not your fault, I said quietly. You were a victim too. Judge Morrison looked at Victoria with cold eyes. Ms. Hayes, it seems there's a pattern here after all. Victoria's lawyer jumped up. Your Honor, Mr. Brennan's testimony is prejudicial. My client was never convicted. Because the victim was too traumatized to testify, Claire interrupted. But he's willing now. And combined with Mrs. Martinez's case and the evidence we found in Ms. Hayes's home files on other potential targets' offshore account information, wire transfer records to Romania, we have more than enough to establish a pattern of organized fraud. Judge Morrison studied Victoria for a long moment. Ms. Hayes, I'm denying bail. You'll remain in custody until trial. Your Honor, Victoria's lawyer protested. My client has no prior convictions. She's not a flight risk. She has offshore accounts and attempted to transfer funds out of the country within hours of obtaining them, Judge Morrison said flatly. She is absolutely a flight risk. Denied. Trial is set for 3 months from today. The gavel came down. Victoria's mask finally slipped. For just a moment, I saw pure rage flash across her face. Then it was gone, replaced by that sweet, innocent expression. But I'd seen the truth, and so had everyone else in that courtroom. Outside the courthouse, Wednesday afternoon, the media swarmed us as we exited the building. Mrs. Martinez, how do you feel about your son's guilty plea? Do you think Victoria Hayes should get the death penalty? Will you forgive Benjamin? Claire and Rebecca flanked me, pushing through the crowd. But one reporter's question stopped me. Mrs. Martinez, what would you say to other elderly parents who might be experiencing financial abuse from their children? I turned to face the cameras. Rebecca touched my arm. Ella, you don't have to. I want to, I said. The reporter thrust a microphone toward me. I took a breath and spoke clearly. If you suspect your child is stealing from you, speak up. I know it's hard. I know you're ashamed and heartbroken, and you don't want to believe someone you raised could betray you like this. My voice strengthened. But staying silent doesn't protect them. It doesn't protect you. It just allows them to keep destroying lives. I stayed silent for too long and I almost lost everything. I looked directly into the camera. Don't make my mistake. Trust your instincts. Check your accounts. Ask questions. And if you discover theft, report it. No matter how much it hurts. Because you deserve dignity and security in your old age. And they deserve to face the consequences of their actions. What about forgiveness? Another reporter called out. Can you ever forgive your son? The question hit me hard. Could I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe someday. But right now I'm focused on justice. On making sure Victoria Hayes never does this to another family. On recovering what was stolen and rebuilding my life. I paused. Forgiveness is complicated when the person who hurt you is your own child. But justice is clear. And that's what I'm fighting for. Climax number 2, The Visitor, Thursday afternoon. Thursday afternoon, I was in my garden trying to find some normalcy in pulling weeds when my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Benjamin's lawyer, Jeremy Cole. I opened the door cautiously. Mr. Cole? Mrs. Martinez, I apologize for showing up unannounced, but Benjamin asked me to deliver something to you and to ask you a question. He handed me another envelope. thinner this time. What's the question? Benjamin wants to know if you'll come see him, in jail, before his sentencing. He says there are things he needs to tell you, things he couldn't put in a letter. My first instinct was to refuse, but curiosity and maybe that stubborn part of me that was still his mother made me hesitate. Why should I? Because he's cooperating fully with the prosecution. He's given them everything Victoria's contacts her offshore account information names of other men she's been involved with. He's trying to make this right. Making it right would be giving me back the last 6 months, I said bitterly. Making it right would be not stealing from me in the first place. I know, but Mrs. Martinez Benjamin is going to prison for 5 years minimum. This might be your last chance to get the answers you need, the closure you deserve. After he left, I opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper with just a few words in Benjamin's handwriting. Mom, I know I don't deserve it, but please come see me. There's something about Victoria you need to know, something that might help the case against her, and something I need to tell you about Dad. Please, Benjamin, something about Dad. I called Rebecca immediately. Benjamin wants to see me. Absolutely not, she said firmly. Ella, that's a trap. He's trying to manipulate you. He says he has information about Victoria that could help the case, and something about Arthur. Rebecca was quiet for a moment. What could he possibly know about Arthur that you don't? I have no idea, but I need to find out. Then I'm coming with you. Rebecca. Non-negotiable. If you're going to see Benjamin, I'm going to be there to make sure he doesn't manipulate you. Call Claire, get permission, and I'll meet you at the jail. Suffolk County Jail, Friday morning, 10 a.m. The jail was exactly as depressing as I'd imagined. Gray walls, harsh fluorescent lighting, the smell of industrial cleaner trying to mask worse odors. Claire met us in the lobby. I pulled strings to make this happen, she said. You'll have 30 minutes. Everything is recorded, so be careful what you say. Anything he tells you can be used as evidence. I understand. They led Rebecca and me to a small visitation room with a table bolted to the floor and chairs on either side. A guard stood in the corner watching impassively. When they brought Benjamin in, I barely recognized him. He'd lost weight. His orange jumpsuit hung loosely on his frame. He looked older, defeated, but when he saw me, his eyes filled with tears. Mom, he whispered. I didn't respond, just sat down across from him and waited. Rebecca sat beside me, her expression hard. Benjamin looked at her, then at me. Thank you for coming. I know you didn't have to. You said you had information, I said, keeping my voice neutral. About Victoria, about your father. I'm here for that, not for a reunion. The words clearly hurt him, but he nodded. I understand. He took a breath. The information about Victoria first. I've been working with Claire, giving her everything I know. And there's a lot, Mom. Victoria isn't just a con artist. She's part of a network, an organized crime ring based in Romania. Claire told me that already. But what she might not have told you is how sophisticated it is. They target elderly people across the US and Europe, not just through romance scams like with me, but through fake investment schemes, charity frauds, tech support scams. They've stolen over $5 million in the past decade. I felt sick. And you knew this? Not at first, Benjamin said quickly. Victoria kept me in the dark about most of it. But over time I started seeing things, encrypted messages on her phone, calls in languages I didn't recognize, large deposits that didn't make sense. Why didn't you tell anyone? Benjamin looked down at his hands. Because by then I was in too deep. I'd already helped her steal from you. If I reported her, I'd be reporting myself. So I stayed quiet and told myself I was protecting us. Protecting her, you mean? Yeah, he admitted. Protecting her. The revelation about Arthur. What about my father? Rebecca asked sharply. You said you had something to tell Ella about Arthur. Benjamin's expression changed, became almost frightened. Mom, this is going to be hard to hear, but I need you to know because it changes everything. Just say it, Benjamin. He took a breath. Dad knew I was in financial trouble. About a year before he died, I went to him and asked for help. $50,000 to save my business. I stared at him. Arthur never told me that. Because he didn't give it to me. He refused, said I needed to learn to solve my own problems. that bailing me out would just teach me to run to him every time things got hard. Arthur had said that it sounded like him he'd always believed in tough love when it came to Benjamin, but $50,000, that was serious money. I was angry, Benjamin continued. Furious, actually. Here you both were sitting on all this money from the pharmacy sale, and Dad wouldn't help his own son. Benjamin's voice dropped. I said terrible things to him, told him he was a selfish old man, that he cared more about money than his own family, that when he died I'd get the money anyway, so why not give it to me when I actually needed it? My hand flew to my mouth. Benjamin, no. Dad just looked at me with this disappointed expression, and he said, if you feel that way, then maybe I need to reconsider my will. Tears were streaming down Benjamin's face now. That was the last real conversation I had with him. 2 weeks later, he had the heart attack, and I never got to apologize. Never got to tell him I didn't mean it. The room spun around me. Arthur had known that Benjamin was in trouble, had tried to teach him responsibility. Is that why you did this? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. To prove something to your dead father. No, yes, maybe. Benjamin shook his head. I don't know, Mom. I was so angry with Dad for dying before we could fix things. Angry at myself for how I'd treated him. And when Victoria came along and made stealing seem reasonable, even justified, I grabbed onto it. He looked at me with desperate eyes. I convinced myself that Dad was wrong to refuse me, that you both had more money than you needed, that taking it was just getting what should have been mine anyway. It was easier than admitting I'd been a terrible son and an even worse person. I sat in silence processing this information. Arthur had known, had seen the warning signs I'd missed, had tried to protect our money by setting boundaries with Benjamin, and it had cost him his last conversation with his son. Mom, I need to ask you something, Benjamin said. Did Dad ever change his will after that conversation? I shook my head. Not that I know of. Everything came to me when he died. Then he forgave me. Even after what I said, even after how I treated him, he didn't cut me out. Benjamin buried his face in his hands and sobbed. And what did I do with that forgiveness? I proved him right. I proved that I was exactly the selfish, entitled person he'd feared I'd become. Rebecca reached over and squeezed my hand. I was grateful for her presence because I felt like I might shatter into pieces. Is there anything else? I asked when I could speak again. Benjamin wiped his eyes. Just one thing. The cooperation I'm giving the prosecution, it's not just about reducing my sentence. It's about making sure Victoria pays for everything she's done. To you, to Harold Brennan, to all her other victims. He looked at me intently. I can't undo what I did to you. I can't give you back Dad's last conversation or the 6 months before I betrayed you. But I can make sure Victoria goes to prison for a very long time. And I can testify at my own sentencing about everything I did wrong. Why? I asked. Why are you telling me this now? Because I need you to understand that I know what I am. I'm not making excuses. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just need you to know that somewhere inside this person who stole from you, there's still a part of the son you raised. The one who loved you, and Dad. He paused. And that part will spend the rest of his life trying to make amends, even if those amends are never enough. After the visit, Friday afternoon, Rebecca drove me home in silence. When we pulled up to my house, she turned to me. How are you feeling? I don't know, I said honestly. Learning about Arthur, about that last conversation with Benjamin, it changes things. Does it change what Benjamin did to you? No, but it explains it. Maybe. I don't know. Rebecca studied me carefully. Ella Benjamin is still manipulating you, even now. That whole tearful confession about Arthur that's designed to make you feel sorry for him, to make you think he deserves another chance. I know, I said. But Rebecca, what if it's also true? What if Benjamin really is sorry? What if he really is trying to make amends? Then he can make those amends by cooperating with the prosecution and serving his sentence. But you don't owe him forgiveness. You don't owe him anything. She was right. Intellectually, I knew she was right. But emotionally, I was the mother of a 50-year-old man who'd made terrible choices and was now facing the consequences. And some part of me still wanted to protect him, even from himself. The unexpected call, Friday evening. I was making dinner or trying to when my phone rang. Unknown number again. Mrs. Martinez, a woman's voice. Young, nervous. Yes. My name is Jennifer Walsh. You don't know me, but I think Victoria Hayes might have targeted my father. I sat down heavily. Tell me. My dad, Robert Walsh, started dating a woman named Vivian Holt about 6 months ago. She's been asking a lot of questions about his finances, about our family. And yesterday I saw photos of her online from the news coverage of Victoria Hayes' arrest. Jennifer's voice shook. Mrs. Martinez, it's the same woman. Different hair color, different name, but it's her. Victoria Hayes is Vivian Holt, and she's been dating my father. My blood ran cold. Have any money transfers been made? I don't know. Dad won't talk to me about his finances. Says it's none of my business. But he's been talking about updating his will about giving Vivian access to his accounts in case of emergency. It's exactly what you described in your statement to the press. Jennifer, you need to contact the district attorney's office immediately. Ask for Claire Davidson. Tell her everything. I will. But Mrs. Martinez, I wanted to thank you. If you hadn't spoken up, if you hadn't gone public with your story, I never would have recognized her. She would have stolen from my dad just like she stole from you. After we hung up, I called Claire and relayed the information. That makes 4 potential victims we've identified, Claire said grimly. And there are probably more. Victoria was systematic, careful. She kept detailed files. Can you stop her from contacting Jennifer's father? She's in jail, so she can't contact anyone directly. But we'll put a watch on the father's accounts just in case she has accomplices on the outside. Accomplices. The word sent a chill through me. Claire, is Victoria working alone? Or is there someone else out there still targeting people? We're investigating. But Ella, you did the right thing by going public. You may have just saved Robert Walsh from losing everything. 6 weeks later, Benjamin's sentencing, climax number 3. The day of Benjamin's sentencing arrived with brutal finality. 6 weeks had passed since the arraignment, 6 weeks of depositions, police interviews, and sleepless nights. But today was the day Benjamin would learn his fate. The courtroom was packed again. Harold Brennan was there, sitting in the row behind me. Jennifer Walsh and her father Robert were there too. Victoria hadn't been able to access his accounts from jail, and he'd removed her from his will the day after Jennifer showed him the news coverage. 3 other families sat scattered throughout the courtroom, victims of Victoria's other schemes who'd come forward after seeing my statement to the press. We were an army of survivors, and we were here to make sure justice was served. Judge Morrison took the bench. Mr. Martinez, please stand. Benjamin stood with his lawyer. He looked thin, older, broken. Before I pass sentence, Judge Morrison said, I'm going to allow victim impact statements. Mrs. Martinez, would you like to speak first? I stood up, my hands shaking. I'd written a statement, practiced it dozens of times, but now, looking at Benjamin, all my prepared words evaporated. So I spoke from my heart. Ella's victim impact statement, the emotional peak. Your Honor, Benjamin is my son, and that makes this the hardest thing I've ever had to do. When you raise a child, you give them everything. Your time, your energy, your love, your resources. You sacrifice sleep and money and sometimes your own dreams so they can have theirs. I did all of that for Benjamin. His father and I worked 70-hour weeks so he could have a good education. We went without luxuries so he could have opportunities. We built a business that could provide security for our family. And in return, Benjamin stole from me. Not just money, though. $280,000 represents 45 years of hard work. He stole my trust, my peace of mind, my ability to believe that the person I loved most in this world would protect me, not destroy me. I'm 70 years old. I should be enjoying my golden years. Instead, I'm here testifying against my own son. My voice broke, but I pushed on. Benjamin said he's sorry, and maybe he is, but sorry doesn't give me back the nights I've spent terrified about my financial future. Sorry doesn't erase the sound of his laughter when he thought I'd never find out what he'd done. Your Honor, I don't want revenge. I want justice. I want Benjamin to understand that actions have consequences, that betraying the people who love you isn't a mistake, it's a choice. And I want other families to know that it's okay to hold your children accountable, that loving someone doesn't mean enabling their worst behavior. Benjamin made his choices. Now he needs to face them. But I also want to say this. I still love my son. God help me, I do. And maybe someday, years from now, we can rebuild some kind of relationship. But that day isn't today. Today I'm asking you to give Benjamin the full sentence. Not to punish him, but to give him time to truly understand what he's done. To become the person his father and I tried to raise him to be. Thank you. I sat down, tears streaming down my face. Rebecca handed me a tissue, and Harold Brennan reached forward to squeeze my shoulder. Judge Morrison nodded. Thank you, Mrs. Martinez. Mr. Brennan, would you like to speak? Harold stood up slowly. When he spoke, his voice was strong. Your Honor, I didn't testify when my son stole from me. I stayed silent out of shame and love. And because of that, Victoria Hayes was free to destroy Mrs. Martinez's family. I can't change my past. But I can tell you this, if I could go back and do it differently, I would. I would have stood up. I would have demanded justice. Mrs. Martinez is braver than I was, and every family here today is braver than I was. Benjamin Martinez needs to go to prison, not just for what he did, but as a message to every other person who thinks they can exploit their elderly parents without consequences. We deserve better. We built this country. We raised our children with love and sacrifice, and we deserve to age with dignity and security. Make an example of Benjamin Martinez, Your Honor, so that my silence 4 years ago won't result in more victims tomorrow. The courtroom was absolutely silent. Judge Morrison turned to Benjamin. Mr. Martinez, do you have anything to say before I pass sentence? Benjamin stood, his face wet with tears. Your Honor, I did everything my mother said. I betrayed her. I stole from her. I justified it by telling myself lies. But working with the prosecution these past 6 weeks, helping to build the case against Victoria, I've learned something. I wasn't just Victoria's victim. I was her accomplice, her tool. And that makes me responsible for every family she's hurt. Not just my mother, but Harold Brennan, Robert Walsh, all of them. I deserve to go to prison. And I'm not asking for leniency. I'm asking that my cooperation against Victoria count for something. That the information I've provided helps put her away for the rest of her life, because stopping her is more important than my freedom. He turned to look at me. Mom, I know you'll never forgive me. I know I destroyed something precious and irreplaceable. But I want you to know that every day I'm in prison, I'll be working to become someone worthy of the parents who raised me, even if I never get the chance to show you. The sentence. Judge Morrison reviewed her notes in silence. The courtroom held its breath. Mr. Martinez, she finally said, you pled guilty to elder financial abuse in the first degree. The sentencing guidelines suggest 5 to 10 years. Your cooperation with the prosecution against Victoria Hayes has been substantial. You've provided evidence that will likely result in her conviction and potentially help dismantle an international fraud network. However, you betrayed your mother in the most calculated way possible. You used her love and trust as weapons against her. Therefore, I sentence you to 7 years in state prison with the possibility of parole after 5 if you continue to demonstrate genuine rehabilitation. Additionally, you will be required to pay full restitution to your mother, $280,000 plus interest, and you are permanently banned from serving as power of attorney for any individual. Finally, upon your release, you will serve 5 years probation and perform 1,000 hours of community service educating others about elder financial abuse. The gavel came down. 7 years. Benjamin closed his eyes, absorbing the reality of his future. Then he looked at me one last time before they led him away. I watched my son disappear through the door in handcuffs, and I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no relief, just a vast, empty sadness, but also something else. Peace. For the first time in 6 weeks, I felt at peace. End of part 3.